The fence about 100 feet to my left, where I had come through, was being pulled apart. Violently and with furious snarls and rough clamor. The space was in the process of invasion. Invasion with an agenda. Then an army of heavy steps raced towards my direction. Around me. Straight to me. Beyond me. All grunting, sniffing, and some howling from what I felt to be a sense of frustration. I saw fuzzy silhouettes populate the mist. Small, operational lights around the water tower and surrounding utility buildings took over for the moon, in lightly illuminating the fog. Quick motions, figures appearing and disappearing, almost entirely in my peripheral vision. Each time vanishing when I turned to look, surrounding me, enveloping me. I stayed alert, quiet and petrified. I thought that my shaking alone and pounding heart would draw them closer. Then, an all-out onslaught to the utility cabin. The office under attack with a near certain assumption of my scent. My scent. Within. They wouldn't stop until they were upon me. Windows smashing, walls being ripped apart like cardboard. The hairy arms mobilized to search and assault. I then heard heavy panting near my head. I turned slowly to see a set of crimson lights staring at me, and its fanged mouth erupt in a screech of delight, which sent me into a delusional terror, crying for the first time in memory. I knew I was found, and I would only hope that it was quick. They worked together to try and get under, grabbing with their razor-like claws. I pushed to the center, while the mobile office was elevated by the group, enough for one to get under and grab me. I was yanked into the cold wind, surrounded by a certain frenzy of teeth, efficient tearing tools of hungry, cursed, lichened stomachs. The one that had grabbed me and presented me to the pack was closest while the others moved closer. It growled directly into my face and bared its teeth. It arched its back to strike. I could only cover my neck and face with my arms. The nightmare was nearly over. This wolf suddenly was launched onto its back from an invisible strike. I was being fought over, I thought. There would be a pack battle for fresh meat. It was, however, just one. I recognized it. Him. Andre. Wounded shoulder still apparent. His eyes were clear to me. He turned his back to me and sent a spine-chilling high-pitched growl vocalization to the pack. Over his shoulder, he looked at me. Glancing down, he knew the others would not hold for long. He did what he thought would be best to save my life. He launched on top of me, providing a deception, giving the impression to the pack that he was the one to take me. He didn't waste a drop of energy in his pantomime, howling upward, then roaring down onto me, and sinking his teeth into my arm. I shrieked. The pain was untenable. I immediately passed out. In immense pain, I awoke screaming in fear. There was no time lost between the charge of those teeth and this very moment. I tried to sit up but couldn't. I also couldn't open my eyes fully, and with the little that I could see, it was blurry. The few parts of my body that didn't radiate pain were completely numb. I could feel cold somehow. I heard shuffling nearby. I had no way of protecting myself this time. Not that I could, before, but this time, I was nearly blind. It was light, this I knew. Lighter than it was before I woke up, from the vertical gradient glow that I was capable of taking in. It appeared to be dawn. The ground beneath me felt frozen, so I knew it wasn't advanced into the day. It also made the shuffling and footsteps all more apparent and clearer. I raised my right arm, the only one that I could feel. My body manufactured a pulsating pain that ripped into every cell in my body. My vision still out of commission, and legs defective, which took care of my banged-up knee but provided a much worse condition. I felt paralyzed, but was able to raise my head up slowly. Immediately, heavy steps paced away into the distance, with a deafening commotion of grunts and hisses, and busted branches that shocked my eyes open involuntarily. It was indeed dawn. I looked up and around, across the landscape in complete horror. I was in the forest. Again. I did not get there under my own steam. My arm was badly wounded, covered in dark blood, with even darker spots that represented punctures. Dozens of them, varying in sizes, but a certain pattern that revealed, with conviction, that these were bite marks. What happened? I was attacked by the Volkolak, by Andre's cursed alter ego, to be precise. Then I wake up here. My wound covered in a slime that smelled atrocious. I couldn't tell if it was from the infection or maybe some sort of weeping wound fluid, exudate, as I'd learned from a machinery first aid course I took. We all had to endure these ambulatory certifications due to a high number of factory injuries. I once saw a man take 2 fingers off with a hydraulic saw, down to the wrist. This was as bad, in a different way. Most certainly, those sounds that were all too familiar were my Chudo friends. I must have been abducted into the forest for protection, or from the putrid scent of the slime, treated in some odd way. I tried to get to my feet. This was difficult. The pain was terrible, but getting to my feet, my bloodied breathing corpse, and getting out of there while I had daylight was paramount. I've had enough of the forest. I've had enough of it all. What I could have used was any sense of direction. I had no idea where I was. I used what I had, and that was the direction of the sunrise. My drive to the factory each morning put the sun behind me during those days. I knew that I lived east of the factory. Therefore, it was logical that I needed to move south to get to town. I used the fortitude I had left and the little strength I could muster and stood vertical. Slightly staggering, but I was upright. I moved forward, and the beastly sounds in the distance that once terrified me now made me feel protected. It took me nearly an hour to reach the forest line. Into the clearing and eventually the town that drew stares and gasps as they witnessed this blood-soaked walking dead move through its streets. I reached my home. No keys or wallet. No phone. Nothing. Had the landlord get me in and make me a new key. It was a long day and a long trek home, and it took the journey to process the occurrences and come to the conclusion that I knew to be true. That Andre was my defender last night. The bite I knew was the life-saving hoax. If he had not intervened, I would have been ripped to shreds. This was undoubtful. No question. Then I thought about Andre. How I failed him. How I could have forced him not to leave that night when he was taken from us. The night that he transitioned from happy, proud, tool and die specialist, an occasional party guy, to bloodthirsty, feral slave to the night. Then lying on my couch, warmer from a hot shower and clean underwear, I looked down at my wound. I saw thick black hair growing out of one puncture. At that moment, I wish I had been ripped to shreds. I was cursed, and I knew it now. I had suspected this, but I was certain, and I needed to figure out what I was going to do. What can I do? I can only think of one person that may have the answer. Someone that I recognized as closest expert on the subject. I had to see Piotr at the inn. I couldn't go anywhere soon. I was in bad shape, and with night approaching, I didn't know what fate had been decided for me. Was I to end up like Andre? Could I be spared by some circumstance? Perhaps Andre bit me in a way that was surgically tactical somehow. Perhaps I was treated in time by the Chudovisko. Either way, I needed to rest. Lock my doors for what good that would do from an attack from an entry or exit. I locked every door that would lock inside my apartment. I would leave for the inn at Alexandrovka, on the river the day after. I slept for what seemed like a full day. The evening was without incident, thankfully. The following day, when I woke, my wound had disappeared, with the exception of some scarring. I felt perfect. I felt well rested and energized somehow. I was determined to leave immediately for the inn. I phoned Piotr and made him aware of my plans. He accepted. I packed and got into my car immediately. First, I phoned the plant and spoke to my boss and was transferred to Fedor in HR, and was told I was being terminated earlier than my resignation date, and that due to the amount of days that I have missed without notice, that the terms of their termination would not include any compensation, because of what they felt was a violation of my resignation period remaining days, and it was asked to report to Fedor on Monday for any follow-up steps and an uncomfortable conversation, to be certain. I was unemployed now, but I was free of this place. I was thrown into this madness that saw my employment suffer from, and now I'm not employed due to it. I found it ironic that my freedom came from the same source that I was now chained to. I don't know if I could ever go home. I don't know if I could ever fly for 14 hours. Would I discover that I'm cursed? If so, still tied to humanity like Andrei? Or would I become some mindless monster, if I've been affected at all? Piotr would have answers, I was hoping. I put my things in the car, stopped for fuel, and set out on the drive towards Piotr and Victoria's inn on the river near the Ukraine-Belarus border. I would arrive by 3 p.m. I was sad to hear that Victoria, unexpectedly, had to leave for some urgent family situation and wouldn't be around for my visit. Piotr, incidentally, did not sound like my visit was something he was relishing. With some exasperation, he accepted my request to see him after providing him with only minimal details. He was a kind man, through and through, but I felt he wanted nothing of my situation. Of course, I didn't tell him of the bite, only that I'd been attacked, and as he earlier predicted, sheltered by the Chudovisko, who seemed to have rescued me. I feel negligent in refraining from offering the bite detail. Surely he would not have agreed. I felt guilty and hoped that my condition, if there was one, would not put him in danger. Only one stop to get a borscht with paska at a countryside market. My appetite was ferocious. The borscht and bread were terrible. I couldn't tell if these experts, true Ukrainians, were making poor replicas of their national food or vegetarian dishes. For me, I moved on to a large cut of slow-roasted lamb. Not seasoned well, but I nearly finished it in 4 bites. I ended up making a bit of an awkward scene, tearing into it with little dignity, but I was ravenous. I was still hungry but needed to get moving. Back on the road, making the best time I could, I felt something peculiar. Sounds. The drive was woven with ambience of nature around me. Tree branches, animal footsteps, chirps, croaks, splashes. On top of it all, my car's motor. Acute absorption of my surroundings. It was weird. I chalked it up to a bit of mental trauma. My nerves had been tested and destroyed in one night, and were now mending, perhaps. Long drives are typically therapeutic. I swear, though, I was hearing bees in the forest and animal heartbeats. A trick of the wind, no doubt. I turned into the long driveway, to the inn at Alexandrovka. I reached the river. Very noisy this time, but I tuned it out and parked my car in front of the house. Piotr emerged from behind the house, walked towards the car with a smile as I opened the back door of my little Renault to retrieve my bags.
Hello? Good drive,
he cheerily began. Yes, quite nice, very peaceful. I responded without going into the din of the forest that became a bit of a bother. I wouldn't know how to explain it, so I left it.
Excellent. Are you hungry? Victoria left soup and fresh bread for you made last night.
He offered. I would love some. Oh, really hungry. My own answer caught me by surprise. I was hungry. I had eaten quite a bit just recently, nearly 2 hours before. Nevertheless, I was famished. I hoped there was more than soup.
How have you been, Peter? how's Victoria?
I asked.
I'm well. She's well. Her sister in Kiev, she wanted to visit her. So she left yesterday and will be gone for a few days.
He explained.
That's too bad.
I said.
Would have been nice to see her, but do tell her I said hello. And I brought her some nice chocolates made in a Pripyat shop.
Very kind. I know she will enjoy. Now, come in before it gets too cold.
He invited. I smiled and nodded. He took a bag, insisting to help. We got inside and I took off my jacket and waited to be invited to sit, as not to appear cavalier on my second visit and make myself feel at home. He gestured to a seat in front of the fire and offered me a whiskey.
You know, sometimes we do like whiskey too. Secret, I tell you. I like much better than vodka.
He declared with a cheeky wink.
Irish is best. I like American and Scottish sometime also.
Maybe just a little. Thank you, Peter.
I replied. He turned towards the kitchen and returned with 2 small glasses of whiskey on ice, along with a large bowl of soup and a half a loaf of bread. He put it all on the table to the side of me, then handed me the glass and sat opposite me. He swirled the ice around in the glass and took a sip, let out a satisfied breath. I sipped and placed it on the table next to me on a carved wooden coaster, carved with the St. Peter's Cathedral, probably a souvenir from a trip long ago.
Peter, I want to thank you for taking the time to spend with me.
I said.
Things have been very strange. Or terrifying is a better way to phrase it, to be honest.
His brow furrowed with concern.
Tell me about this attack.
He murmured in a low, serious tone.
Okay. As you know, my friend Andre, who worked with me at the factory, I mentioned his name before to you, if you remember. Well, he was lost after a night at my house. Like this, of drinks and good banter. He insisted on leaving to walk home, and then was gone until he wasn't. Nobody knew he was found because of his condition, and because of this condition, I could tell no one.
I further added.
So I needed to tell you, because I need your help for this and more.
I moderately pleaded, while trying to dig into the food as tactfully as possible. I was starving. I began to weave through every single detail, over multiple whiskeys, during this time continually scratching an ever-increasing itch on the wound of my arm, to the point of breaking skin. I explained every single moment, and then the attack, and the bite, and the aftermath, including explaining how I ended up waking in the forest surrounded by hideous, radiation, hippo-headed dudes that were keen to avoid me when I did awake. Peter looked at me with sudden alarm expression.
Bitch!
He cried out, scaring the shit out of me. Placing his glass down, he ushered me out of my seat and said,
Come!
It seemed like now was not a good time to question him or launch into some investigative queries about what we were doing. He took me down the hallway of his first floor that dissects his large inn. He stopped and turned to me, and close to my face, he whispered,
Show me bite.
So I pulled off my button shirt, and then pulled up the short sleeve of my thermal t-shirt to reveal bite wounds in scar form.
No,
He exclaimed.
Where is bite? Healed. Is healed.
He asked with some terror in his voice.
Ah, this is the bite. I just have good DNA. I've always been a fast healer. I mean, never this fast, but it was 2 nights ago.
Trying to make sense of the nonsensical in a slightly drunken state. God damn it, I was hungry again.
Alex, do you understand any of this?
He warned.
How is appetite, senses, your mood?
Yeah, hungry all the time. I do tend to hear a little clearer now, but I'm not angry. More energetic than usual, but not moody or angry or anything.
I replied.
Why? What are you saying?
I pleaded.
I don't know, Alex. I've experience with this. Very personal experience. I can tell you, this is not good. There is chance. and I think you know what I say. You may have infection, condition, curse. It is not safe for you or people around you, not safe for me. Why you not tell me before you come? Alex, I'm sorry, but you must come with me.
He led me down the hallway to a wooden door at the end that opened to another hallway. It was strange to orient myself because it didn't seem to fit inside the house as I knew it. When we got to the end of this doorless hallway, we approached a door that was heavily fortified, seemed to be made of iron. It was rusted slightly, but was saturated with rivets up and down and across. He pulled out a set of keys, singled out an old skeleton key. Then, with an echoed sound of a latch opening, he grabbed the bar of the door, pushed open, revealing stairs into a descending blackness, which disarmed me. He then halted us, stood in front of me, placing a hand on my shoulder, facing me with squinted eyes. One of those life lessons looks that a father gives to a child when he's in front of a difficult task, like my father regularly engaged in. On one knee, hand on my shoulder, after I'd done something mischievous or before a hockey game, pep talk.
Alex, you must understand something,
he whispered emotionally.
Many years ago, when Victoria and I lived in Pripyat, we had cottage near Red Forest. We were happy. Before nuclear problems, we all stayed away from forest. We stayed closed in at night. When daughter escaped into night to be mischief,
he sorrowfully added,
we were tortured with worry. Did not know what to do. We searched forest and not found after days. On final day of search, we were lost in forest, could not find way back.
Peter continued, moved his hand on my shoulder.
When finally find light to village, we rushed, but then chased by something. Things we knew but did not experience, but we were right to be afraid. We ran faster than we thought we could, not fast enough. Before we got to village, we were attacked by Volkolak. 4 of them, some gray, some black fur. I jumped ahead of Victoria, between them and her, and screamed at them. I pick up stick, swing, but with giant arm and claw they slap me away. And then I see attack on my Victoria. I could not stand. Keep trying, but no stand, no breath. I scream with no breath. And then hear gun, many guns, shooting round me, shooting at Volkolak. The hairy bastards growled and ran off. I begged God for Victoria to be safe. She was safe, but she was not. Village took her to local hospice for bandage.
He shed a tear while explaining his story. I knew the ending before he finished. My heart broke for him, for her.
She like you now, Alex. She survive. Not food for Volkolak, not kill. But maybe, if villager and guns come, maybe food. She's different. She control condition, as you call it. Not much, but little bit.
He trailed off and looked down the stairs into the darkness and raised his arm to point down.
You sleep here tonight.
What? In a cellar? If that's what this place is.
I responded with concern.
It's pitch dark and cold. No way, why?
Peter pulled a cord from above us, turning on the bulb below and illuminating the basement. I could see nothing but what looked like a cold, hard floor.
Come.
He beckoned as he led me down. I looked at him, a bit alarmed, and if it were not for Peter's kind and trustworthy nature that I have come to know, I probably would have run the other way. I slowly descended with him, stairs creaking. Reaching the bottom, I was able to observe right and left and ahead. Directly in front of me was a wall with shelves and tools, nothing extraordinary. Glancing to my left, I noticed a bed. A single old-style metal-framed bed with a single mattress. It was a bit worse for wear and not something that I relished sleeping on.
I must sleep here?
I stuttered.
Will I at least get a blanket and pillow?
No. Alex, I'm sorry. This is where I sleep, to make sure you're okay, and I keep eye on you,
he responded.
I don't understand then. Where?
He immediately pointed to my right as I was finishing my sentence. It was a cage. Large, heavy bars. Empty. I was stunned.
I am sorry.
He let out in a sigh, head shaking.
I had small bed in there and blankets, but difficult to keep when Victoria keeps destroying them, so I stopped trying to bring comfort things,
he explained.
I'm to sleep in a cage?
I challenged the proposition.
What are you afraid of?
Alex, if what feel to be true, what I know is true, you will not be you. In hours when moon is high, in this cage for you to be safe, I must be safe. Everything must be safe,
he explained.
We have little time. I will get you comfortable, but cage must be locked until morning. You must remain inside, locked,
he added.
Okay, Peter. I understand. I don't want to be a danger to you or anyone else,
I told him, nearly in tears. This was my life now. An occupant of iron bars for the rest of my days. How could I endure such an existence?
This is acceptable for now. But is there hope for me? If I've been cursed?
I asked. Peter walked towards the cage and opened the door. The metal squeaked. He looked back at me intensely.
I have tried, as you can imagine, with Victoria. Obviously, my wife, the love of my life. We lost our daughter, had only each other, and now only half of her existed. Day and night versions. We need to find anything to try and make curse go away,
he added in a sadly desperate tone.
We knew one man, descendant of many descendants of powerful witch of Baba Yaga. If he not know how to erase curse, nobody know. Maybe he do this himself. We had to try,
he explained. Peter walked back upstairs with me to fetch my stuff, not allowing me to take anything of value inside. He continued.
Well, we traveled to far side of Ukraine where man lived. He was long journey to Fontanka, near Odessa.
He added.
His name Mikhail. This is where we told he lived.
He ventured on.
He was oddity, famous for being strange man of village and telling all he was the last of Baba Yaga blood. He seemed a joke, more Hollywood weird man than witch, all showing off. He told us that if we pay him and he make curse disappear, he not believe us, in saw money only.
Peter said with his fist clenched, followed by a sadness that seemed slightly apologetic, as his brows furrowed in regret.
Man made ceremony with bit of Victoria blood and chanted in old language. He continued. We sat, eye closed, waiting for miracle. Then something happened.
Peter was alert and serious.
Victoria became, how you say, agitate.
I nodded in verification.
Victoria screamed very loud, which opened my eye with shock. She was not being cured. Something make her change into monster.
He said with terror.
She changed quickly. I told man, run fast, as I did same. Victoria, my love, my wife, my soul. Suddenly, with no warning or expect, I was prey. I was quarry. There was little memory to be had for her of me.
He said in broken whisper.
Victoria twisted, contorted in limbs and face, and skin broken and redesigned, transformed into a nightmare. I was crying, terrified same time. Wanted to calm her. This would be irrational. Nothing would work. So, I ran as fast as could. Mikhail ran before, but Mikhail, unfortunately, was old man. Not quick. He limped slowly. He was easy target for Victoria. Victoria, the Volkolak. She set eyes on him, was on him very fast. And I knew I could not help. I heard old man scream and never forget sound of flesh being ripped apart until he no longer scream.
He added.
I hid outside. I heard door being ripped open, completely off hinges. As I heard it hit ground, I could see her holding man arm in one giant hand. I never seen her this out of control and enraged. She was not the same. I think this witching procedure make her crazy. I only hide behind tree for chance to run to car.
He illustrated, with his hands moving chaotically to somehow explain this surreal moment.
Then, sound as I step on something that break, that makes sound in darkness. Then I paralyzed, as heavy breath of thing that was wife. Stop. Immediate. Look in my direction and growl at me.
Peter continued.
I knew I must run. I had key in hand, made fast run for car. She lunges onto hands and feet running like dog. Fast. I got in the car. Locked door. It was instinct. Not thinking beast would know door handle.
Peter's eye roll provided a slight hint of levity at the silly presumption of a ravenous monster calmly opening a car door.
Then it smashed sever arm on car window, and as close as I ever been to face. It roared at me, making me deaf almost, with wide mouth open, giant teeth near face. I knew glass would not last. I started engine and drove quick.
He continued.
I had to drive fast. I drove on dark road, not see behind being chased by her. I drive almost 50 kilometers per hour. Victoria was still racing close behind. I pushed faster in my old car. Suddenly moved off into forest instantly. Maybe something else make her interest. I keep driving, leaving her behind. Not my Victoria. Something else. But tomorrow, my Victoria again.
He lamented while moving around the room picking up old blankets and a bottle of water. He finally added,
Next day, local police found her on the road, not far from where I last saw her. She did not know this Odessa area, having no clothes. She was questioned for a long time, given a fine, told not to come back to area because they no like hippie freedom agenda.
He smirked.
This not check, they told her.
He laughed out loud. Peter walked towards the back door. He offered me a gesture that he would be back in a moment.